You're listening to the I Love You Keep Going podcast with George Haas. For more information, please visit our website at www.mettagroup.org. That's www.mettagroup.org.
So, welcome everybody. This is I Love You Keep Going. It's Thursday, September 25th, 2025 at 7:35 p.m. Pacific Daylight Time. And I've been talking for the last couple of weeks about the earthquake of abandonment terror, where we first talked from the point of view of dismissing attachment strategy. Then last week we did preoccupied attachment strategy. And this week, I thought that we would talk about the earthquake of tsunami, the earthquake of abandonment terror from the perspective of a disorganized person. It's surprising to me as I sit here tonight thinking I've left out secure people, but not really. uh, You might even talk about the earthquake of abandonment terror from the point of view of resilience or being able to reset your emotional distress. And the thing about secure people is they have resilience. And so if something becomes really terrifying to them, they go through this process of recognizing the activation and then that information from the amygdala is sent to the hippocampus for evaluating whether the stress is real or not. If the stress is real, if the terror is based on something that's actually happening, the body mind finds an intention and action to take and engages in the action. If it finds that it's not real, it's been kind of in the reassessment process, it deactivates the activation. And so you might say that the characteristic of disorganized attachment is that they don't reset very well. So they're not resilient in that way. Something happens that causes an activation of the amygdala, causes an activation of the perception of abandonment. It's emotionally destabilizing, and they're not able to reevaluate and reset particularly well. That activation then of the attachment system deactivates the exploration system, and because they don't really have the skill set of collaborative relationships, it's very difficult for them to turn towards somebody else and to get the co-regulating experience from someone else to help them settle. It's also a different intensity of fearfulness. Whereas dismissing people are really sensitive to being humiliated, and that's really the origin of that for them. Preoccupied people are afraid of being abandoned. Disorganized people are afraid of being killed. And so if you examine the intensity of fearfulness around being killed versus being abandoned or being humiliated, it's a much greater intensity of experience, which is even more destabilizing to the cognitive capacity, which means the collapse of mentalizing, the collapse of emotional regulation, which means there's no response.
Can I ask again? Dismissive people are sensitive to being what?
Humiliated.
Humiliated. And who to abandoned?
Preoccupied people.
Preoccupied. Okay. Thank you.
And then, well, the thing about disorganized people is that they have mostly the cause of disorganization is trauma. So they're mainly on the other side of the trauma line. Now, we have in our culture at the moment a sort of colloquial use of the word trauma, which is a fairly low bar in terms of what constitutes trauma. But in attachment theory, there's a pretty high bar for trauma, what we would consider, or what would score in an adult attachment interview as trauma. But you might say that it's enough to engage the fight or flight system. Uh, and it is usually related to the caregivers being the source of fearfulness in the child. The child, something happens to the child which causes them to be frightened. That activates the attachment system, which compels them to seek physical proximity and protection from somebody who they think will protect them, usually the primary caregivers. But when the primary caregivers are the source of that fearfulness, the attachment system activates and compels the child into physical proximity with the caregiver who is the source of the fearfulness. And so the fight or flight mechanism activates and cancels out the attachment system, which means the child no longer seeks comfort and protection from anyone in particular. If you see a small child who is having that experience, really they just collapse in that moment and suffer the extremity of the emotional experience without seeking comfort or soothing from anyone. That's the dilemma. If we break it into if we break the big category of disorganization into the smaller categories, you would say fearfully preoccupied, fearfully avoidant, and then complexly disorganized. Fearfully preoccupied people are like preoccupied people when they get into that state, except it's uberized, if you will. It's extreme. That emotional chaos that they're in is extreme to the point of, say, tantrum mode, very slow to settle. And fearful avoidant people, it's a kind of shutting down and withdrawing. If you withdraw from the people that are able to help you emotionally regulate, then you just, in some sense, are engaging in auto-regulation, which is your main way of settling, which takes a long time relative to co-regulating with somebody and a lot of resources. It's exhausting to be so extremely dysregulated, so reactive, and actually not be willing to seek care from anybody. One of the other things about the disorganized state, which is different from organized people, you might say that organized people who have an organized attachment, have the capacity still for epistemic trust. In epistemic trust, what that means is you think that people will tell you the truth, and you think that they'll have you in mind when they're telling you what they're telling you, and that leaves you open to learning from them, which leaves you open to being emotionally regulated by them when you're dysregulated to the point that you can't regulate yourself. That leaves you available to receiving help from someone else. So that when you're emotionally dysregulated to the point that you can't regulate yourself, and you have people in your life that there is a functioning level of epistemic trust with, you can go to them and get help from them and receive that emotional co-regulation that comes from that. But disorganized people typically don't have epistemic trust in other people, which means they don't believe that people will tell them the truth, and they don't really believe that people will help them. They don't really have intimate relationships that they can turn to, that they know will be reliably regulating. And so they don't. Um, so then they have to ride out the waves of dysregulation. Would it?
George, could you elaborate on what do you mean when you said that they don't trust other people? Like, what do they think of the other person? Like, what's the view that they're holding against other people when they see somebody?
Well, when you have a caregiver who is also the source of fearfulness or the source of harm, uh, what you likely have is an experience of the caregiver describing the world to you that doesn't match up very well. It's very hard. It's very hard to integrate the way that they describe the world and the way that they function in the world. Um, so they don't believe people. Um, they don't believe that that they can rely on what you say. Uh, they don't believe that you have their interest in mind. I think that's close to what I just said.
Is there an example about the weather, about the emotional state of the disorganized person? What's the context of the?
Well, they don't believe, if they don't have the capacity for epistemic trust, they don't really believe anybody tells them the truth. They don't rely on what people say, really. But it could be a benign example, which you hear often enough is, I'm going to come home from work. Your dad says to you, I'm going to come home early from work and we're going to go to the ball game. And then they don't. Uh, um, I'm gonna do this for you. I'm gonna do that for you. Any of those kinds of things. I would never hurt you. I love you. And then they hurt you. Uh, um,
So are you saying the receiver doesn't believe that this will happen, that they will go out and play?
right? They don't. They understand that the caregiver is saying to them that they're going to do something for them, but then that doesn't happen ever. I can give you an example of my mother in the later part of life. Um, I didn't see her very often, but when I did, she would say, "Oh, I'm knitting now. I'm going to knit you a sweater." And then she'd get this catalog of patterns, and she'd get these tufts of yarn, and she would sit with you, and you'd go through the pattern book and pick a pattern, and you'd go through the different kinds of yarn, and you'd pick a yarn, and then she'd tell you how great the sweater was going to look, and when she would have it for you. But the next time, if you went over there, uh, ask, she'd tell you that she was going to knit you a sweater and ask you to go through the process of picking all of that. And after 3 or 4 rounds of that, I stopped sitting with her to go through the book and pick a sweater pattern because I was mad that there wasn't a sweater at the end of it, right? What I didn't recognize was that process was an expression of love that was uh, at her limit. And so in turning down the ruse of picking a sweater pattern, I didn't have those moments of engagement with her, if that makes sense.
Or completion, you should say that. The completion never happened.
Right. Well, yeah, nothing more than that moment of sitting there picking the pattern happened. And the third time around, I said, "We've done this twice," and I just flipped to the book and pointed to the yarn, which was very distressing for her.
So I'm wondering, there's a good gesture, like there's also capability here, right? There's a gesture of love that I want to show to you, but I'm not capable of doing it because it's too hard or it's, I don't know.
Or it was simply the attention in the moment that she was interested in. And once she had that, that was a complete experience for her. But when you have a childhood that is like that, I'm going to do this for you, I'm going to do that for you, and it just never happens. And all of that energy is elicited from you to engage in them, which is in some sense just a role reversal. You're taking care of them in the way that they need to be taken care of at your expense, really, if you think that there's going to be a sweater or you think anything in a childhood where that happened over and over again. So then you think when somebody says, listen, I'm going to do this for you, you think, yeah, right, you're going to do that for me. Nobody ever does it.
You're just saying it because it's a good thing to say. You're not going to actually do it.
Yeah, you're just saying it because you want me to say, ooh, ah, isn't that great that you're going to do this?
Oh, okay.
But actually, there's no expectation that anybody will follow through on anything. That's what happens. And that's fairly, it's not violent. It's not exploitive in a way beyond that. It's just that all of those small things. I'm going to do this for you. I mean, I'm going to come and pick you up from school. That mostly didn't happen. So what do? You come out of the school, and if she's not there, you walk home. There's no waiting. And then she catches you halfway home and she says, why did you wait for me? Because you don't show up most of the time is why I didn't wait. But can you say that? I remember one time I cut my foot pretty badly and I went to the neighbors to see if they would help me. And they called my mother and she was home and she came over and she said, why didn't you just come home? I could have fixed it. But that was because most of the time in the past when I'd come home, there was nobody there. So I needed help and I didn't go home because that was my expectation, that I wouldn't get help, that I had to go to the neighbors to get help. Is that making sense? That complete lack of epistemic trust. And so she said to me, why didn't you come home? And I said, I didn't think anyone was home, which was half taking care of her, half frightened to tell the truth. But
I have this thing with compliments. I'm never sure how to. Is that how you say you cannot accept compliments because you don't believe in them yourself? Maybe that's a separate issue versus disorganization or epistemic trust.
well, what do you believe about a compliment?
That is just a good gesture from somebody to connect. It's like.
Or is it that they want something from you? And the compliment, is it true, but it's going to be followed by a demand for something that you might not want to do.
Oh, I see.
There's lots of things about not believing the sincerity, but experiencing it as a manipulation. So what are you going to be manipulated into? It's the setup. I'm very sensitive to that as well. But sometimes I think people mean it. You can begin to recognize that. I think if you're coming from the disorganized end of thing, what we really are looking for is the resilience of being able to emotionally regulate or to set up relationships with epistemic trust. Most of the time in childhood, when the difficulty with epistemic trust arises, is in puberty. We don't really have the cognitive ability to make these discernments in mid and early childhood about whether or not the caregiver is telling us the truth or not. And most of us who have inconsistent care in childhood split off the capacity to monitor whether or not the caregivers deliver on what they promise. So you'll find that if that happens to you, that you over and over again enter into these agreements with people where they don't deliver, and we don't notice it, but we also don't mentalize ahead of time that this might be one of those situations where they're not going to deliver, and just simply accept at a surface level that they will deliver. And then when they don't, we're surprised and disappointed. Whereas had we had the capacity to mentalize at a high enough level, we would have recognized that this is a person who doesn't follow through or doesn't deliver, and stop entering into those agreements with them. What happens in puberty, of course, is that child's brain, which is just a warren of axons that aren't connected to anything, so that you can sop up a huge amount of information really fast. It gets pruned down to the barest scaffolding of things that are previously connected, which really advances your capacity for cognitive thinking and cognitive understanding. And so you're suddenly able to see these agreements that you make with people. And if you decide that your caregivers did not tell you the truth, and what they did tell you was not in your interest, that was in fact in their interest, the epistemic trust just shatters. We don't have the cognitive capacity yet at that age to discern between reliable and unreliable people, and reliable and unreliable adults. So we simply cast out all adults. And we cast out all of our peer groups who are still relating to adults in a confidential way. Which does not mean we're completely alone, which means we turn to the society of young people who have cast out all adults and all peers that have relationships with adults, and turn to each other for guidance and advice on how to navigate the transition between childhood and adulthood, which is one of the reasons why kids who have lost the capacity for epistemic trust do so poorly in that transition. You rely on people who've never had the experience before to help you navigate it. People that don't have an adult level cognitive functioning and have very little risk reward capacity. And so you make a lot of boneheaded moves, which have consequences that can really cause unfortunate outcomes. Is that making sense? So part of this, in terms of dealing with the earthquake of abandonment terror, which is this thing that makes you frightened that you're not going to be able to survive, that can cause explosive responses. One of the things about the expression of anger in disorganized people, because the capacity to regulate emotions is limited, and because the capacity to reset is limited, the eruptions of anger can be quite explosive. One of the things about these big explosions of anger is that should they reach a level of contempt and they're expressed to somebody else, it's very difficult for somebody else to recover from that. Contempt is a particular type of anger, which is the expression of your opinion about their moral failure. you judge them as morally deficient. And if you're on the receiving end of that expression, it's very hard for you to recover from that. The capacity for epistemic trust is already so limited if existence, that a blast of contempt is enough to just completely demolish it, what's left. Of course, you who've lost control to such a degree, once you do recover, can see that it may not have been warranted in the way that it happened. I think the phrase that comes to mind about that is from people who I've been on the receiving end of their contempt is, what happened? I don't know what happened that it would escalate to that level of intensity. And when I say that it can create irreparable damage to the relationship, what I mean is that the person who's on the receiving end of it is no longer able to form epistemic trust in the relationship to you. That's what happens. And it's not volitional. They could not just make their mind up to do it. It's so deep into the nature of your whole being that sometimes it's just not repairable. And that's one of the reasons also that over time, disorganized people are more and more isolated. The relationships that they do have, if they blow them up, it's hard to form more relationships. What you'll notice in disorganized people, you come of age and the mind changes and you're able to function at a much higher cognitive level. There's the adolescent period, let's call that 10 to 20. And there's a propensity in that age to go out and want to be an adult and then get battered around by the adult world and come rushing back to the family system and want to be a child again. So there's that freedom in organized people to try it out and then come rushing back and collapse into childhood again, and then go back out and attempt to be an adult and come rushing back and collapse back into childhood. But this is also often not something that's available to disorganized people. So they have to rush out into the world and try to be an adult, but they don't really have that place to withdraw back into. And so they get out into the adult world without the cognitive capacity to really function at that level, so that they're very easy to exploit. And there's no end to the exploration of young people. And then you get into your 20s and you're ready to go. This is that youthful moment of energy, and you're actually able to often leave home and then try out the world. But that limited capacity at being able to understand social cues that would come from a much more emotionally regulated life than you're really capable of, and the impact that it has on cognitive development means that over the course of your 20s, you fail over and over again. And that failure attaches to the risk-taking of exploration, disappointment. You can't mentalize well enough to understand why it doesn't work for you, but you can see that it works so easily for other people. You can't regulate your emotions. You don't understand why everything is so intense and you feel so sensitive about things. It's so easy to miss the social cues that you might use to really form strong attachments to groups of people or teams. And each time you fail, you gather up the disappointment until at some point in your early 30s, the disappointment is accumulated to the point that you just don't want to risk feeling it. And it blunts your willingness to engage in relationships. So what you'll notice is there's this change where disorganized people begin to withdraw from attempting to socially engage. In fearfully preoccupied people, that it's a there's still a longing to be engaged. There's still a longing for proximity to people, but the risk of disappointment isn't worth it. And so there's a reluctant withdrawal from social engagement. Fearful avoidant people, on the other hand, tend to be very poor at understanding who will exploit them and who won't exploit them. And if they have too many experiences of being exploited, they withdraw voluntarily from engaging with people to avoid being harmed through exploitation. Is that making sense? And so what you'll notice in fearful avoidant people is that they intentionally withdraw from trying to form relationships and decide to make a go of it alone, because that actually produces a better life than a life that is constantly really sort of wrecked by these exploitive relationships that they get themselves into. Is that making sense? It did?
So the lesson here, you would say, would be that fearful, at least or fearfully preoccupied or dismissive, is that you still would get rejected. Regardless of the rejection, you still push against it, right? You still go for it.
Right. Well, organized people have a much better outcome typically than disorganized people do. I mean, we really would say being disorganized is like falling off the cliff. Organized people are up here on the bluff, and life is okay. It's more or less okay for everybody in comparison. And then disorganized people, it's like tripping and falling off the edge of the cliff.
Oh, sorry, actually, I meant to phrase it as, oh, like you'll still get rejected, but you will still be alive and okay being alone. Like you keep trying, yes, but if you get rejected, you will still be okay. That the
Right.
rejection is not of your being, but the rejection.
Well, yeah. 7 times down, 8 times up. That's the resiliency piece, right?
Resiliency, right? That you'll be alone, yes, but you'll still be okay.
You'll be alone, and you'll devalue, if you're dismissing, you'll devalue the person who rejected you to the point that they don't matter, and then you'll go off to the next idealized version of what it is that you want. That's the mechanism.
And what did Preoccupied do to get over?
Preoccupied people will seek proximity to somebody else. They don't wait
Right
around
away.
either.
As soon as they're rejected.
They're abandoned, so they need to seek instant proximity to someone else. Preoccupied people use pretend mode as the main way of bonding with people. Pretend mode means they pretend to be attached to you. They're not really attached to you. They pretend to be attached to you. So that if you withdraw from that attachment, they don't suffer like you might anticipate them suffering from the antics that they have presented, because they were pretending to be that connected to you. They weren't actually connected to you in that way. And so they just go pretend to be connected to someone else. And then I would think that actually dismissing people would suffer more than a preoccupied person would suffer the loss of a relationship in that sense. Yes, they suffer the immediate dysregulation of the loss of the empathetic experience to the other person, which they count on as their regulating experience. But that doesn't mean that they can't turn around and engage. You know, I like to say head spinningly fast is what happens. Dismissing person is likely to have more of a problem than a preoccupied person.
Yeah, that was also another thing for me. It was just this idea that you're just waiting and just telling myself that I'm fine being alone when I'm rejected just for 2 hours. It's fine.
Right.
I am not gonna. Nothing will happen. I'm
Right.
not gonna die.
Right.
And the second realization was that I'm not as perfect as I thought I was.
Uh-huh.
So there was this sense of ordinariness that kind of is disappointing, but it's kind of also important
Yeah.
of yourself that you're just ordinary. You're not as
Well,
ideal as you think you
as
are.
heartbreaking as that is,
It was, yeah.
most of us are pretty ordinary.
Yeah.
And even if we're not, the circumstances of life are pretty ordinary. You live in a body, it has ordinary needs. David.
Weird question. As we heal, can we start off as fearfully preoccupied and then become more organized as we're healing and then become secure? Or do you go straight to secure?
No, no, no. I think that that's what happens if you're fearfully preoccupied. You heal the dissociation first. You heal or you create resilience, emotional regulation, mentalizing skills, and all of that then gradually shifts you into perhaps an organized preoccupation and then into earned security. The one that is the most head spinning is complexly disorganized people. The dismissing aspect of that constellation heals faster than the preoccupied side. The dismissing side always heals faster than the preoccupied side. And so you swing out of that back and forth between preoccupied and dismissing into just preoccupied, which is a difficult transition for most people. And then you move into earn security from there. Yeah. Is that making sense? So the dissociation, which is a common feature of disorganized people, is the emotional regulation piece, right? Dissociation is a primary means of emotional regulation. So you have to develop alternative means of emotional regulation that also helps with the resilience. Once you improve the mentalizing and the emotional regulation so that you have much greater resilience, then you can begin to form more stable relationships. One of the things about disorganized people is that they're very volatile, and if they get activated, they're very slow to settle. And so they're also very unpredictable in terms of how they'll show up. If you eliminate organized people from your relational life because you can't show up reliably enough to sustain a organized, attachment-oriented relationship, then the majority, if not all of the people that you relate to are also disorganized, which means you don't have the experience of anyone reliably showing up for you. That means that you have to also develop the capacity for reliability. So those things. First, the emotional regulation to come out of the dissociation, the mentalizing combined with the emotional regulation, which creates the capacity for resilience, and then the discovery and the development of reliability so that organized people will have relationships with you. That's the main thing. Make sense? Why don't we do a little bit of practice? What would you like to do?
A quick question about metta practice.
Uh-huh.
That during the metta, it's not transitioning towards people's in the world. It's there is metta towards life and everything in life, but not specifically towards people sometimes.
Well, in loving kindness practice, it's very relational. So in the metta vipassana approach to things, when you are with other people and you're engaging with them, the idea is to be running metta in the background. Whereas when you're on your own, the idea is to be running vipassana practice in the background, but that you're continuously meditating at all times, ultimately is the end goal of it. The reason that we say metta when other people are around you is because it's more relational and more oriented toward other people, whereas vipassana is more internally oriented. And so you can appear to other people to be detached and disengaged from them, which can undermine the relational connectivity. But in the way of practicing loving kindness, when we make the intention to radiate the loving kindness towards somebody, that's a metaphysical expression where we make an intention, but we don't necessarily allow the mind to be directed toward the other person in that way. What we're attempting to do is explore mind states or views so that we can understand how we create the nature of conceptual reality. So it is the exploring of view or mind state. Mind state is the Western word. View is the Buddhist word, in English, of course. So what is the view of loving kindness? It slips in between ultimate reality, the pure sensing data, and what you make the data into, the meaning that you assign the data, and it has a distorting quality to it. So you learn what the pattern of distortion of loving kindness is, and then have agency in holding the view or the mind state continuously. Is that answering your question?
So in the sense that right now, when you're speaking with me, you technically in the back of your head have may you be peaceful mind state towards.
Yes. So I can look at you through the mind state of loving kindness and understand that I'm looking at you through the mind state of loving kindness. And because of that, you look differently than if I looked at you through the mind state of equanimity.
Same with listening, right? I'm not just listening, but a part of my mind is reserved for me sending loving kindness to you.
No, you don't have to do that. You just have to hold the view. And then all of that unfolds from there.
Holding the view will be different from me sending loving kindness to you.
Right.
Okay.
It's not cognitive in that sense. It's how it's affecting the way that you create conceptual reality from ultimate reality. You distort it in a positive way. And then you have the experience of, I have the experience of you that's distorted in a positive way, so that when the unconscious body mind makes the intention for the action that I would take toward you, it's all infused in that. Does that make sense? I don't need to remember to send you loving kindness because the whole body mind system is generating it. So that the way that I respond to you holding that view would be different than if I were holding a different view. And it's a wonderful thing to do because everything is so beautiful when you do that. The whole world, everyone in it, looks just really beautiful. And so then you're responding to everybody as if they're really beautiful. It's very easy.
I just thought that you consciously do not have the power. You can only you are after your senses, not before your senses. But then there's a
Right. That's why you have to hold the view in order to have it proceed. Otherwise, you're remembering and going back.
right, exactly. It's like at the being level, not at the
Yeah. Right. Let's do some loving kindness then. So go ahead and settle in, closing your eyes, scanning to the body, looking for any tension you might be holding, seeing if you can release it. Okay. Let go of the meditation. How's that?
That was, I had a real feeling of seeing, like while I was getting the loving kindness state of mind for someone, I thought, what if I walked into a room and somebody had a state of mind about me the way that matched the state of mind I generally have about me, and how awful that would be.
Oh.
To feel that energy coming from someone else. I've never looked at it that way before, that energy I have towards myself.
Mm.
And that really made a big shift in me, because it was just, oh, I see what I'm doing. I can hold this delight in other people, but I could see exactly how I was blocking it for myself, because I couldn't see what it looked like until I pictured it coming from someone else.
Lovely.
Yeah, so that was really very powerful. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Someone else? Saturday is the third day of the level 1 that we're currently doing. And then on Sunday at noon is the Open Door Dharma, which is at the AT Center. So if you're in LA and you want to go to an actual live sit, it's at the AT Center in Los Feliz from noon until 1:30. Let's see what else is happening. We have it's October already, huh? On October 11th, not quite, but there, I'm going to do the exploration intermediate mentalizing class Saturday, the 11th, from 9 to 1. And then on the 18th, the advanced mentalizing, which is also in the guise of an exploration discussion. Kaleidoscope is on the 24th of October, which is our monthly Q&A and practice session. Take a look at that. And then we have a level 2 starting on October 21st on Tuesdays from 4:30 to 6:30. In November, on the 7th, I'm going to do a workshop on our meditation and attachment approach, which is on Friday from 7:30 to 8:15. And then on November 15th, I'm going to do which I do this once a year at the beginning of the holidays, which I call family archaeology, where you get to go home and take a look at the family system you grew up in and contextualize it so you have a sense of how that may have affected you. And I think that's everything. We're starting before the end of the year. We are going to have a virtual retreat this year, starting on December 29th and running until January 2nd. It's from 7 a.m. until 4 p.m. Monday through Friday, which will be, in some sense, a all-in-one level 2 class. So if you want to come in for a refresher to do it, take a look at that. And then we're into the next year already. Amazing. So that stuff's up on the website. Take a look at it. Really appreciate your practice. I offer the teaching freely, but I do hope if you have resources and you're able to or willing to, you'll make a donation. There's a donation button on the website. Hope to see you soon on the path somewhere. Bye.